Hello, and welcome to Rosa Laura. If this is your first time on the channel, then it's so wonderful to meet you. And if you're returning, it's so fantastic to have you back. My name is Rosa, I'm a digital artist, and today I'm working on a redesign of Knaphe Exley's armor. Even though I usually say that I'm a digital artist at the beginning of these videos, this sketch or this drawing that you see in front of you is actually one that was made traditionally. I was just working on some pen and paper, first with pencils, working out the shapes and forms of what I wanted for Knaphe's new look, and then I went over it with pen. If you are somebody who likes working with traditional materials, you should tell me what types you like the most. Personally, I'm a really big fan of Japanese stationery, specifically Muji pens. I just love the way that the ink flows, and I find that it dries pretty quickly and makes it easier for me to get rid of the pencil lines underneath. I've heard really good things about India ink, but I haven't had the chance to work with that traditionally yet. So if you've ever worked with that medium, let me know. I'm always looking for something new to do. In any case, it is time for Knaphe to get a little bit of a redesign. She had the amazing once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to meet the King of Roon, which is not something that you get to do every day. And he, in return for some intel that she had on what was happening on Bulwark Isle, gave her some very special equipment and a little bit of a mission. The equipment that she was given was a new set of scale mail, and my dungeon master was super cool and let me kind of take my own interpretive take on how much mail there was and where it would be placed. And the king and Knaphe had a little bit of a conversation where he gave her both something to think about and a mission to consider for the future. Knaphe is exiled and she can't go back home, or so she thinks. Earlier in the Bulwark arc, she met up with the ducal heir of Bulwark. His name is Bertrand, and they got along pretty well to the point where he told her that he would fight for her to have her title back. Now, Knaphe doesn't know if that's something that could actually happen, and in fact, she's rather convinced that despite all of his best intentions, it's not a reality that could ever come true. But Bertrand's feelings and sentiment were very deeply appreciated. The King of Roon has, I suppose I'll say, a similar idea, but it's also unique and different from what Bertrand set out. The first thing that the King of Roon said to Knaphe is that he wanted her to go on her own adventures, which seems very, go play in the yard, kids. But I think that he actually meant it in the idea that Roon will need people like her later on. And by people like her, I mean people who are different and unique. Roon can be at times a rather monocultural society, and they can be very insular as well. The fact that Knaphe is Fey-touched sets her apart from others, and she went away from home after realizing that she was, and understanding that she no longer fit in with the picture of her family. But the King of Roon told her that someday she's going to be needed again for her country, and that he hoped that she would eventually return. It meant a lot to her to hear that from someone who only has the country's best interest in mind. And it's the kind of message that any knight of the realm would dream of receiving from their ruler. So she's been sitting on that for a little while. I sat a while on this design as well. There's a lot of different moving parts and a lot to balance. There's a lot of different little details that go into this that make it a full armor set. Knaphe now has a deployable shield, which she was given by Hetch, who was using it before her. It was decided that Knaphe could get a little bit more use out of it, out of character. And Hetch's player was happy to, I guess, fork it over. I did not expect for him to do so, but it was very kind of him to do so, so I do appreciate that. She has a manticore tooth dagger, which sits on her hip, and of course, silvery little thing. When she was in Roon, she was given a new scabbard for Silvery Little Thing, and I've interpreted that as this style of rapier holder. The little buckles actually allow for it to be adjustable. So if she ever got a different weapon, she would be able to adjust the size of the buckle so that it could hold a different sword. Not that I think she's going to be giving up Silvery Little Thing anytime soon, as she is deeply affectionate for her blade. The armor as well is something that she received on Bulwark Isle. The blacksmith Sigland, who gave her the scabbard, also gave her a new breastplate. The breastplate was a bit of a dud, admittedly. There was a chemical process by which the gilding was supposed to be put on the breastplate, so it's supposed to be fully gold, but the chemical process failed, almost killed one of the workers in his blacksmithy, and they were just kind of holding on to it, not really knowing what to do with it. Knaphe was looking for a breastplate, and Bulwark was in this time of war and tumult. It's not as if Sigland had a lot of time to work on a specialty project, even for a knight that was going to be fighting off the devils that were attacking the island and the city of Bulwark. But at seeing the breastplate, Knaphe inquired about it, and, well, he said that it was a bit of a failure, but she insisted on having it anyway. Sigland seemed reticent to actually give up the plate, but Knaphe insisted because she thought that she could get good use out of it. She asked him if it was structurally sound, and he said yes, and she said that that was good enough for her. It was interesting from an artistic perspective of how to handle the plate because it immediately introduces the idea of mixed metals. Usually when I've designed an outfit for Knaphe, I'm either leading on the gold and bronze palette with more warm tones and thinking about that as her runish palette or her kind of like hereditary palette, since her own family's colors are gold, maroon, and navy. And whenever I've put her in silver, I've leaned more into her wintry side, so blues and silvers and whites. But with the introduction of this botched metal, of this mixed metal with gold and silver, it kind of opened up the door for me to challenge myself on what I could do with the palette. And what I decided to do was to take this scale mail, since I had full artistic liberty, and make it a two-toned scale mail as well, with all of the edges being ringed with gold and the main part of the scale being silver. I made some knee pads to match with some little scales dangling off, and also put those little scales on the boots as well. I thought it would make for a nice little piece of armor. This is definitely the most armored up Knaphe has ever been in the campaign, and I struggled with what I kind of call in my mind the armor problem, which is you design a character, you love the way that they look, you create an amazing color palette or color story for them where you feel like their essence is truly exemplified, and then you cover it up with armor. And armor can run the risk of feeling impersonal or too military or not enough like them. So you have to work extra hard to make sure that the armor still reflects that character's personality and that you don't lose their colors in the process of putting them in something that is protective. I don't know if anybody else out there also struggles with armor. I feel like I felt this even more when I was playing in a science fiction campaign, in that the armor sets just felt more kind of modern military, and honestly, that's really not my vibe. If I have to go with a kind of armor, I will go medieval before anything else. I thought for a while about getting rid of Knaphe's signature puff sleeve, but it just felt so integral to her own design and silhouette that I had to keep it. I did braid up her hair for a little bit of a change. She has worn her hair in a few different styles at this point in the campaign. And I wanted to do something that was a little bit more practical than her hair flowing everywhere all the time. And I put her in her usual beige, sort of camel-colored pants, and she's wearing her same thick belt with the big circular buckle. Peggy's courting kerchief, who Knaphe is a bit romantically entangled with, sits on her hip, though that's not the only suitor that Knaphe has nowadays, as she and Maxim have officially kissed in canon, and they are a couple. I'm sure that this is a big surprise after the last speed paint that I posted, where they were like, intermingling souls in the sea of souls and reminding each other that they were, human and alive. So I don't think this will come as a surprise to anybody who took a look at that last speed paint. But even so, there's moments that even take me by surprise. The two of them went out and danced under the moonlight and kissed and howled like wolves, and it was beautiful. But Knaphe is going through a lot of changes, and some of them are welcome, and some of them are scary, and some of them are both. And I wanted to design an armor set and a new look for her that allowed for her to keep her personal identity, hopefully her color palette and silhouette, while also showing that she's growing as a character, getting new pieces of gear, and that she isn't stuck in the very same place forever. And on the whole, I was pretty happy with this piece. I saved it and I posted it with my friends, and I was very proud of Knaphe in the way that she turned out. But there was a problem. From a distance, she looks very brown. And I think that's pretty clear to see when you just look at her head on. Even though there's a lot of shading in between the individual scales of her armor, and they do look shiny and bright and textured, they don't stand out enough against the pants. There's enough of a differentiation between the belt and the breastplate, and then the scabbard and the pants. But there was a point where I was looking at this piece and I just wasn't quite happy with it yet, which was disappointing because I had posted it. I thought that it was done. I made the background and I felt like I went over everything and made sure that it was properly shaded and overlaid and everything was working together. And it was really discouraging to look at it on, my little window in Discord and be like, well, something isn't right here. I like it, but I don't love it, and I feel like something is wrong. My sort of rule or my idea here is almost like a character can be like a flag, and those flag rules is that you should kind of be able to identify it at a distance, that it should be kind of immediately recognizable. So after realizing I had made a mistake, I saved my piece and I opened it back up and I went back to the drawing board. The first thing that had to change were the pants. I needed for there to be more contrast between the pants and the armor, and I thought that between the two, the pants were going to be the thing that had to change. The armor was already set in stone. I liked the way that it was shaded. I liked the two-tone of the different metallics. So I needed to do something to cater to that. And then I realized that something that I had neglected on the piece was bounce lighting. So I went through and made sure that the scales bounced that atmospheric light that's coming off of the different pieces of clothing. And these details really made it. She looks so much more dimensional. The piece looks so much more cohesive, and I think that this redesign ended up being a success because I was able to go back and figure out what just didn't feel right. I want to thank my patrons who helped me make art, but especially Banjo, Confocal Clips, Deator, and Firepit. You guys are the best. And of course, you. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit like and subscribe. There's another video on the screen if you'd like to take a look at something else I've done. And if you like what I do, you can support me on Patreon. And remember, it's all gonna be okay. See you next time.